Ooh, this VCR right here. So in the previous video, when I was unboxing some of these VCRs, this one is the one that I kind of mentioned is a little special to me. This VCR, I can't remember if I bought it at a garage sale or a friend of mine bought it at a garage sale in the 90s, mid-90s, for $5. Now, in the mid-90s, buying a VCR for $5 is holy shit level cheap. Nowadays, yeah, they're everywhere. But back then, and it had the remote, but funny enough, it was missing one of these buttons. These buttons just pop off. And I can't remember, power or eject was missing, but you can just swap them. But everything else was intact, and it had the original remote. And we called it the Emerson. And it was notorious for just eating tapes. But we used it. We would trade it back and forth and use it for whatever. And it worked most of the time. It would just chew tapes every once in a while, and the tape would ride up and down. And I tried everything that, a young person with no resources for VCR repair could try. Now in 2021, I know the problem was that it had a worn pinch roller. I know that now. But anyway, this VCR I did a lot of work on back then. So this one holds a special place in my heart as being one of the first VCRs that I had. The absolute first, other than my parents' Sylvania, which I've done videos on, would be a RCA. I think it was a VGT 250. Those big Panasonic made top loaders of the early 80s that had the knobs on the side. And it had pause, and it had fast forward scan, but it didn't have rewind scan. Very odd machine, and it was massive. And that was my first VCR that I had. I think I bought it when I was 11 or something, from a family friend, and he sold it to me because it wouldn't play in color. The color demod circuitry had gotten all wonky on it, but I had a black and white TV in my bedroom, so perfect. And later on, when I bought a color TV, I learned that the color demod circuit would kind of kick in and lock in if you wiggled the tracking back and forth really fast, which meant playback you could play in color. Recording, all the recordings I had from that time period were in black and white because obviously tracking doesn't do anything when you're recording. And it's a lot of work to pop the top off and sort of slow the head down with your finger to get the color to lock in. But yeah, anyway, this would have been sort of the second VCR of my childhood. Taking a look at it, of course, it's a Emerson brand. And Emerson was an American brand. US, made a lot of radios and stuff, mid-century. By the time this was made, I don't think there was much left of Emerson as an American brand. This was built by Orion. Emerson was making a lot of cheap stuff. I considered this machine a cheap machine. Hearing what Mr. Magnetoscope and the VCR King had to say about this Orion mechanism, they speak quite highly of it. So I feel like my experiences 25 years ago were probably a little bit wrong. But it's kind of neat. All the buttons on the front here, or these ones, are for setting the timer, or setting the one-touch record. So you set the start, you set the end, and you can, I don't remember how these work, we can play with them in a moment. Counter timer, reset memory, all standard stuff. So this goes between the counter and the time. You have your picture control or sharpness control, tracking, these little tiny knobs. Your speed, record speed, VCR TV, RF modulator. It has a repeat function, which is neat. So when you play a tape and it gets to the end, it'll rewind and just play it again. Very useful in commercial applications where you have a business playing a tape in the background all the time. Your clock set and timer settings. Timer record to start the timer recorder, put in the mode. Now here, this is all dedicated to the tuner. So this has presets. If anyone's familiar with Sony Betamax VCRs of the time, this is going to be kind of familiar. You have, I think it was probably 14 presets. We can take a look and see how they're set up. And you would select the band. So you have VHF low, VHF high, and UHF, and there's indicators here for them. So when you're on the channel, I can't remember if this shows when you're all the time or just when you're in programming mode. So you select the band, then you tune. So you hold these down, and it's the equivalent of tuning through the frequencies and fine-tuning to adjust it. And then you set your channel indicator. So you can set the tens digit and the ones digit to whatever channel. I believe this went up to about channel 30. I want to say 36. I know this got channel 31, which was Teletoon in the late 90s. So it went up to at least 36, or at least 31. But I feel like 36 is pretty par for the course for a machine like this. I think mine was from 85. I think this one's from 86. So, mid 80s. And automatic fine tuning. So once you've tuned the station in, you can turn this on to lock it in. The door survived shipping nicely, which I'm very happy about. Your channel up and down. And then your playback controls, a big healthy play button, stop, fast forward, rewind for scan, big pause, and record. Very simple controls. Let's power it on. Played around with the tuner, hooked it up to UHF, my little in-house setup. It's got a very strong tuner, and I actually remember this. Okay, more story time. We didn't pay for Teletoon, we didn't pay for that package, but the channel was right at the edge of the tier. So what they would do is they would put filters on the cable coming into your house in the analog days. Notch filters that would basically block out certain blocks of frequencies. But they didn't want to go too far and block out the adjacent channel you were paying for. So they'd always err on the side of giving you more than less. And this VCR, I remember I was able to use it to watch Duckman because it had such a strong tuner. And that's very obvious with this because this is going through like 3 splitters and I just jammed some wires in the back there. And it's tuning in very nicely.
So yeah, there is an electromagnet, and my other Emerson VCR also has an electromagnet.
Does that look familiar? I tuned in some of my channels. And they all tune in very nice. This is me cheating. I have a Chromecast hooked up to channel 30. See the preset there? So I'm able to Chromecast whatever I want. Although it does, if it's a 16:9 video, it does squish it into 4:3, which is annoying. That's something I'm working on. If anyone knows of a HDMI to composite converter that doesn't squish, let me know, because that would be great. I would rather have the sides cut off and be able to send it 4:3 video. Or choose too, that would be very nice. Anyway, setting your tuner. This has a very interesting way of doing it. First off, you need to make sure the clock is set. If the clock is flashing, it won't let you do jack squat. All you have to do is press clock set, and it's flashing, it'll stop flashing, you're all good. Next, it's even got a little instruction here, right? It's all numbered, it's so nice. So it's saying, hey, press the preset button. It'll tell you what number preset this is. I was wrong when I said there's 14 presets, there's actually 16. So there's an additional 4 presets above your channel 2 to 13 for VHF. So if you go here, you'll see the numbers. So select the channel you want. So let's say it's this one. Next you want to select the band. And that's where this little indicator comes in here. Set to UHF right now. You can set to VHF low or VHF high and UHF, and you say, well, what are those? Don't worry, they wrote it down here. VHF low, channel 2 to channel A3 on cable. VHF high is channel A2 to W on cable. And in between there, sandwiched in the middle of these two cryptic channel names, are channels 7 through 13, which is the traditional VHF high. And then, of course, UHF channel 14 to 83. This VCR is new enough that it should only go up to 69. I think it was 83 they shortened the UHF band to sell off the upper channels to the early cell phones. Funny enough, when cell phones were analog and you'd tune around the high UHF stations, you'd get all sorts of weird sort of like audio. You could almost like see the audio frequencies on the screen and get a bunch of weird. You could sometimes hear conversations. It was wild times. Anyway, what's kind of cool is if you're tuning this. So I'm on channel 14 right now. So I'm at the bottom of UHF. There's UHF there. And I can use these arrows to tune up and down. It'll automatically move me down to VHF high once I reach the bottom of UHF. So I'm holding the tuning button right now. And it should kick over any moment now. Oh, preset is off. That's why. Okay, let me hold the button again and pretend I didn't. There we go. See? It'll switch over. Cool. And I can just hold the button and tune till I see a station. So I'm tuning through. This is weird. This is channel 4 on VHF low. I don't know why I'm seeing like a ghosting of it or a harmonic up in all the way at the beginning of UHF. That might be VHF bleeding through in the circuitry here. At any rate, that's not supposed to be there. Let's just ignore that and let's go up to channel 14. There we go. Now that I've tuned it in, let me get it just perfect here. And I can adjust fine tuning, which is just a slower way to move through. So if I want to get it slightly on the edge because this is an antenna and it doesn't really tune in that well, I can adjust the fine tuning. And once I have it good enough, I can turn automatic fine tuning on. What? Oh yeah, you gotta turn preset off. So I'm done setting it. Now I can turn AFT on and off. You can see it sort of makes a bit of a difference there. That's off, that's on. So it sort of cleans it up a little bit. If I turn preset back on, the last thing you want to do is set the channel indicator. So this sets your 10s, this digit, and this sets your 1s. And what's cool is I can turn the 10s off, and I can call this channel 0. Channel 0. You can do whatever you want, man. It's the Wild West. It's completely useless in 2021. Besides the people who do the crazy weird RF modulation inside their house, there's no... What? Got closed captions. Okay, cool. There's no analog sources anymore. They're all dead. But I like analog TV, so I keep it alive here. One last thing to say. The reason I have this squealy CRT TV hooked up is when you're tuning around the band, you really want to use a TV that doesn't blank the picture when the signal is low. Modern TVs will just go to a black screen when they don't get a signal. Some later CRTs would use a blue or a gray screen, and newer VCRs would do that. You want an old school TV that, you know, if I go to a channel that doesn't have anything on it, it just shows me nothing. Because then you can sort of see the signal change and be able to find your channel a lot easier. But of course, let's look inside. I haven't even popped a tape in this yet. I'm just having a blast. Okay, so there's a weird thing I remember about the VCR that I had, and this one does it too. There's a diode on the main circuit board that looks like a regular diode. It's got sort of a cylindrical shape, but it lights up like an LED. Now if we look down here, this guy right here, see if I can zoom in. Yeah, see when I hide the... What is that? I think it's just a regular diode. The one in mine actually looked a lot more like one of those clear diodes, like this one here. This one looks a little fatter and weirder. But if I turn these lights off, it lights up. How cool is that? What is the purpose of a part on this circuit board to light up other than an accidental byproduct? So that's very neat, because I specifically remember the VCR I had doing that, and to this day I have no idea why. So it's awesome that this one does it too. The video, so there's actually two videos originally on this. VCR King did a video and Mr. Magnetoscope, because this VCR has traveled all around YouTube. So I believe VCR King or Anthony replaced this pinch roller, and yeah, it definitely feels like a very good condition one. All the belts were replaced. You can see everything's been greased and lubed up. Let's just pop a tape in and see what it does. He says, pretending this is going to do anything other than play the tape just fine. Oh, it's so quiet and wonderful. There we go.
Breaks down into two categories: shells that vibrate and shells that vibrate less. Call them non-vibrate.
Just playing with the pause here. So this is a two-head model, obviously. So you're not going to get great pause, but every once in a while, if you hit it, it'll line up just right. I'm not quite getting it.
Do a few.
There we go. See, the problem with two head is that you're constantly going to be flickering between the two heads. So even if one of them gets clear, the other one is going to be full of noise.
And describe to you these shell configurations.
Playing with
Shells
the tracking.
that vibrate are usually 5/16 or an inch less in.
Sound is good. That's what I would expect from SP. So here's the sharpness control. Doesn't do quite that much, but it gives a little bit of sharpness on SP. SP on some of these two heads, I know some Panasonics were like that. The SP was very soft. So having this sharpness control is nice because you can really peak the video and give it a little bit more crispness. Try fast forward scan. That's nice. That's a good scan. Nice and fast. Oh my god, this works wonderfully. Amazing what a new pinch roller and a good servicing will do. Now this tape is a test tape, so any of those little crunchy sounds and things you see go by, that's just abuse. So quiet and smooth. Let's try an EP tape. So first off, I want to try this tape because it played really weird on that RCA. And I want to know if this just has a very low video signal on it, or if the RCA is... Oh! Haha! Look at that! Oh, I'm sorry, RCA, that I got so upset at you. It looks like crap on this machine too. So there's tracking in the middle. It's going to one side, and all the way to the other side. So, yeah, this is just a real... Oh, wow, this is a... Whatever source this was, it's a very weak video signal. My camera is not showing the horizontal jitter. So just a note about these tapes and their source. Every channel was different. In the analog days, it was a lot harder to get consistency, right? Same video levels, same colors, same sort of brightness, and every channel kind of had a different style to it, I would say, in terms of picture quality. And that's if you had cable and you had very consistent signals on every channel. If you had rabbit ears, aerials, antenna off the air, every channel was just its own adventure. So some recordings, if you find old recordings from the 80s or 90s, they're going to be all over the place. Some will look great, some will look poor, and it all depends on how these VCRs took that video signal and recorded it. Some had better gain circuits, some could only go so far, and that's just how it was. Nowadays, it's so easy to get a perfect picture. You turn to a digital HD channel and it just looks perfect. You turn to the other network and it looks perfect. And it's so much easier. Technology has advanced so much to give that consistency that it's kind of neat to think back when, this channel was always really dark. This channel always had a weird bar on it. This channel was kind of weak. My city, our ABC affiliate on cable, was from Grand Forks. And our cable provider had this old microwave link going down to Grand Forks, and it was horribly unreliable. If you had any bad weather, ABC would go out. And the audio kind of sucked, and the video quality was not great. And that's just how it was. I think into the 2000s before they got a proper satellite link for the uplink for the station. It was very variable. Anyway, that's a long rambling to excuse the bad picture quality on that tape. Let's try another one. I'll put the tracking over the other side.
How far do some people go in search of paradise and hot times?
It's a dirty job, but somebody's got to do it.
Give me a break. An all-new 48 Hours Wednesday.
Last Sunday, 40 million Americans fell in love with a spirited young teacher. As she faces new challenges.
Wow. All the motions are very smooth. Fast forward, rewind, scan. This pause on EP looks delightful. This is a very... wow, this performs differently from the one I had. I think the one I had just needed a good servicing, because this is excellent.
I need you now.
Tyne Daly and Kelly Martin, the series premiere.
I kind of want to order the remote for this. I might do that. Here's a look at the nice VFD on the front. Just something of note, the VFD in the camera looks extremely bright and vibrant right now. I can assure you that is not the case. In real life, it is actually quite dim. And that's pretty common with these type of displays. They're basically a vacuum tube. They have little heaters in them. They have an anode in them and all the grid and stuff. And they wear out. They only last for so long. They're a consumable like a CRT, which is kind of unfortunate because they're also fantastic. You can have different colors. You can do all sorts of different shapes. The LEDs of the 2000s on these machines just didn't do it for me. Let's try LP. Only because this thing records LP as well, so we might as well try playing it. So this tape is crap. Don't don't judge the VCR by the poor quality on this recording. This I would call a Kmart dollar bin VHS tape from the 90s. This is the tape that parents would buy their kids for, yeah, like $1. I had a bunch of these. And it has a bunch of inexpensive cartoons recorded as cheaply as possible. I just can't get over the fact that this is recorded in LP. Oh, 1989. Okay. So, yeah, like this is right when buying videotapes started to get cheap and affordable. because, you know, in the early days, let's say the mid 80s, when tapes were $30+ there probably wasn't a lot of parents willing to shell out $30 for a cartoon for their kid. You just wake up on Saturday morning and watch it live, man. Come on. But times changed. So the pause is decent. Actually, not bad for LP. Machines like this, the quality of the special effects will be in between LP and SLP. This is from an era when LP still worked quite well in these. If you play something with LP back on a modern forehead, it's going to be trash because, you know, you have two sets of heads and this doesn't fit either. And they usually use the SP heads, I think. And EP heads will do a better job at playing back LP. Cool. Well, I'm very happy with this. So happy, I'm going to do some test recordings. Haven't done that in a while. So I have this set to SP. So does this have one touch record? Oh, it does. How nice. So I'm just recording over that tape with the really bad quality recordings. There's no loss there. And I'm recording some cartoons off of channel 16. Now you'll notice this is not perfect. There's some noise there. Reception's not great, but this I would say is quite accurate of recording off of TV at the time. You weren't getting a perfect signal, like if you know, hook up a digital source going through an RF modulator or a DVD player or something like that. You know, you'd have rabbit ears, you'd have cable TV going through some old crappy coax that's been spliced and split several times because the cable company wants to charge you to add extra TVs, and you're like, no, I'll just do it myself. I'll go to Radio Shack and buy my own splitter and then just splice into. So we're recording on SP, switch down to LP. That's also something I like. Some newer VCRs won't let you switch recording speeds while you're recording, and these old machines would let you do that, which is great for demonstrating this sort of thing, right? So now we're recording some LP. I just realized it's probably stupid of me to be recording cartoons that I can't really show back on YouTube.
Okay, I am an licked. I can take a hint.
Wow, it's trying there. What you're seeing is actually what I'm seeing on the TV, where it's kind of multimeter shutting off, where it's kind of flickering. Yeah, there, and it just did. This is live. This isn't the camera interpreting the TV. That's bizarre. Very interesting pause in SP.
Be my pet now, I'll be your master. I know my destiny. I acquiesce.
Playback seems fine on SP. This is LP. Nothing like 1950s cartoons to test the quality of an 80s VCR.
6 5000. One of the last of the great Looney Tunes from...
Some VCRs would use the same speed for picture search, the same movement speed on all three recording speeds. So if you were fast forwarding through SP, it would go a lot slower than EP because it was the same fixed speed, but relative to the record speed in playback mode, it was slower. But check this out. So this is
Beck, and we're watching Transylvania 6 5000.
For some reason, apparently this has the commentary on it, but whatever. So I'm going to hit rewind scan, and let's watch the tape as it goes from EP to LP to SP.
Asked,
So this VCR maintains a constant relative visual search speed to the recording speed. Taking a look around inside, nice beefy transformer for what looks to be a relatively simple linear power supply. Like there's not much here at all. Let's follow the wires. Oh, here we go. So this board is also part of the power supply. So your voltage regulator, is that an STK? Yes, that is. That's an STK5332. So this board here just has the transformer and the filters. The actual regulation goes on over here. Probably explains that weird glowing diode. It's an LED, but is it an LED? It's a light emitting diode, so technically, yeah. It's the stuff for the tuner. And then, oh, what is that? Sanyo TSF 1203. I will look that up and put on the screen what that is. I have no idea. And then you have this big main board and a riser board here. Again, the age of this thing, VCRs were complex. You have a circuit board going all the way around. Here's a look at the back. Earlier I was mistaken when I said this machine was made in 86. It was actually made in 87. This was an 87 model year VCR, so it would have been made in 86 and 87. So the one I had would have been 86 then. So this would have been a year before that RCA that I just did a video on, the VPT630HF. So this is a year older. It's amazing when you compare VCRs how variable they were. This thing's massive. It has a completely different interface. It's just a completely different machine compared to the VPT630HF, which would have been a higher spec machine compared to this. But when you compare that to the 90s, when every single VCR looked the same, had roughly the same controls, did the same thing, the 80s were so cool because everything was just so unique and different. Manufacturers were trying different things. They were figuring out what the norm would be. You know, machines of the 90s, all the load mechanisms in the middle. You still had mechanisms on the side here. You had the flip down doors, all the different controls. The tuners were different and would operate in different ways and give you different channel selections depending on how much you paid. Even the back here, this tuner still has separate VHF and UHF. And some of these machines used the same sort of spring-loaded clips that you would use for speaker wire on speaker terminals of stereos, which sucks if you have little fork clips and have to jam them in there like that. There's a nice outlet. It doesn't say if it's switched, so I believe it isn't. Well, thank you for watching this video about a VCR from the 80s in 2021, or later than that. I don't know why you're doing it, but hey, thanks. And if you want to see other videos on this model, I highly recommend you check out VCR King's and Mr. Magnetoscope's video on this. Literally this exact VCR. This is the same physical VCR they did the video on. And they went into some details about the mechanism and stuff like that that I didn't. So definitely worth checking out. Bye.
Sometimes you got it today. Emerson's got it right. Fine tune your life. Nobody's gotta tell you. Emerson does it right. Fine tune your life. Fine tune your life with Emerson.